Hello and welcome to another Tri-tutors video. In today's video, I thought that we could go through and discuss some key tips and tricks regarding creative essays which come up as Section A in English Paper 3. So what we're going to do in this video is just go through a couple of different styles of writing which you can be utilizing when you're writing these essays, and a couple of things that you need to remember in terms of style and language and grammar. So let's get into it. So there are a variety of different essay styles that you can use when you are looking at Section A of your English Paper 3. So I'm going to run through a few of my favorites. Now you can choose one of these styles and then write in this style, or what you could do is combine different elements of each of these styles to create your own unique essay. So I'm going to go through 4 different styles with you and talk to you about the characteristics of that style and whether I'd recommend it or not. So the first one is a narrative style of an essay. So this is when you're telling a story. This needs to be written in the past tense because this story has happened in the past, and you have to use first person perspective. So you must use pronouns like I, me, and my, telling you the story from your perspective. In a narrative essay, you need to make sure that you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So there must be some sort of storyline, some plot that we can follow, and there must be some sort of action. So something needs to happen in this essay that is going to allow your reader to become enthralled in the story and interested in the tale. This is a bit of a challenge to do when you look at, you only have 400 to 450 words, but it definitely can be done. So you need to have a very strong sense of what your story is going to be. So definitely a plan is essential, but a plan is essential for any essay in my opinion. You always have to have a little bit of a planning. A couple minutes to plan before you actually start writing, but a narrative essay is essentially tracing the story. It's quite important to understand the different styles of essays before you write so that you can be intentional about your writing. So if you decide, okay, I want to tell a story, then you know, okay, I need to be doing a narrative style essay. These are the different things I need to hit. I need to make sure to do it in past tense. I need to make sure to keep the first person perspective. I need to have a beginning, middle, and an end. So like I said, you don't have to necessarily choose one, but just knowing the direction that you're going in. Okay, I want to tell a story. That means I've got to use some of these narrative techniques. When we look at a descriptive essay is all about describing something. We're going to use first person perspective once again, but here we're going to really emphasize our adjectives. We're going to use some really interesting vocabulary. We're going to harness the 5 senses, so really go into detail about what you see, what you hear, what you feel, etc. With descriptive essays, it's quite important to think about showing rather than telling. So instead of telling me, oh, the sky is blue, rather give me an emotion or show me how the sky is blue or how that makes you feel. A really nice way to do this is to use figures of speech, and this can be applicable to any creative essay. Using figurative language is really important to drive your point home and to really make your marker resonate with what you're saying. Another thing with descriptive writing is framing. So this is one of the trickiest essays to write under exam conditions because you have to have a really, really strong vocabulary and you have to be able to describe something, often one thing or just, one group of things in a myriad and a variety of different ways. So having some sort of framing device in terms of the introduction and the conclusion as to, I wouldn't say a story, but some sort of frame of reference, some sort of context as to why you're describing this thing or why you are engaging with this thing or why you are describing it. Next, we have a reflective. This is one of my favorite essay styles to do. It's first person perspective. And here you're going to be switching between past and present. The idea with reflective is you are reflecting on a story, on something that's happened to you, an experience. And you are telling that story and telling me about that experience or telling your mark about that experience, but you also are bringing in a lesson of what you've learned from it. So you're looking back on it now as a sort of more mature, grown-up person. So you're talking about a story maybe from your childhood, and then you talk about how you feel about that now or what lesson you learned from that experience. So I find this one to be a really mature style of writing, a really interesting style of writing that allows you as the author to really show a change in yourself and to show a level of maturity. So here, as I said, it's a story or stories with a lesson. There's a sense of growth and change. It's always nice in the introduction for a reflective essay to put a trigger moment. So, what made you think of this particular moment? So, a good example would be like you were paging through your planner for the year as you're starting to write your matric exams now. And then, so that's like the trigger moment for you thought of how scared you were on the first day of school. Or the first day of matric, and then now you can reflect on writing matric exams, how far you've come, and you're not that nervous person anymore, you're a confident person. So some sort of trigger moment like that where you're looking through your planner, you're looking through your diary, and this is what you realize. And then the reflection is going through the story of what happened in your past, and then reflecting now in the present on what you learned from that experience or how you've changed. And the last one I'm going to go through is an argumentative or discursive essay. So this is more of an academic style of writing, and it's more focused on use of evidence. You don't have to use the first person pronouns. You are really trying to make a point, almost being like a lawyer. So you are stating a fact, sort of what you think, like the sky is blue, and you're giving me different points in each body paragraph explaining or giving me a reason to believe that the sky is blue. You have to use evidence, so this can be a little bit tricky in an exam context because you obviously can't research that evidence. So you're going to have to make sort of these sort of big statements about things that you already know. So it's quite important for this one that you do know your topic very well. It must be logical, focused, and persuasive. So the idea here is to persuade the reader to believe what you want them to believe, whereas your intention of a narrative is to get your reader interested and invested in the story, with reflective and descriptive as well. It's the sense of engaging with the reader's emotions, like getting them involved in a personal tale and being honest and open and vulnerable. Whereas an argumentative or discursive is more academic and it's more focused and persuasive. So in general, what are the non-negotiables? What are the things that we have to make sure are present in all forms of a creative essay for Section A of Paper 3? Your grammar, punctuation, and language, this is very important. Because this is a writing paper, it is all about whether you can express yourself fluently. And so if you make a lot of punctuation errors, a lot of the punctuation errors I see tend to be the overuse of a comma and the underuse of the full stop. So a lot of times students write really, really long sentences, and so their points sort of get tangled and mixed up, and the meaning of what they're trying to convey and the intention, purpose of their sentence gets lost. So please make sure that your grammar, your punctuation, your language is not impeding the readability of the text. So it's not making the marker difficult for the marker to actually understand what you're saying. So that's the first thing, is that it must not impede readability. It must actually flow really nicely and fluently so that your meaning can come across. And secondly, we want to make sure that it is really sort of singing and really going above and beyond. And so we need to try and be using idiomatic expressions and figures of speech, figurative language, really showing that you are comfortable with the English language and that you can really express yourself in a beautiful way. And not just, as I said, when I was talking about descriptive essays, not just telling me what happens in the story, but rather showing me. So showing me how you're feeling, showing me what's going on in your head, and using figurative devices is so effective, like similes, metaphors, hyperbole, exclamation marks, punctuation marks are also pretty important. So two things over there, remembering to use it properly, your grammar, punctuation, and language, to make sure it's effectively conveying your message, but also going above and beyond and using some interesting techniques to really engage with the marker. Register is important as well. Remember, this is a formal piece of writing, so you don't want to be too colloquial. You really want to try and make sure this is academic. And yes, it's personal and vulnerable and emotive, but at the same time, it is written with that degree of academic intention. Remember your paragraphs, you must have an introduction, either 2 or 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. You must make sure you stick to those paragraphs. I know you don't have a lot of words, but you need to make sure you do have at least a little introduction and a little conclusion to really bookmark that essay and to put it in context. Planning is essential. I talk about this all the time when it comes to writing anything, whether it's essays or transactional pieces. You must remember to plan. And the reason why you need to plan is because you don't want to use up everything that you want to say in the first paragraph, right? Because that's you run the risk of doing that if you don't plan. You just sort of write all your ideas and you get them done in the first paragraph. And then what tends to happen is you start repeating yourself in the next paragraphs because you don't really know what to say. So make sure you plan, you figure out what are 2 different aspects to this topic, what are 3 different aspects to this topic that I can really explore. How can I make this a beginning, middle, and end? How can I make sure that this progresses nicely and that it looks at the topic in a complex and nuanced way, that it's not just one-dimensional. So having that planning, showing the progression of your thought in different paragraphs is really important in showing the different elements and different aspects of the topic. It must be convincing. So whether you're writing an emotional piece or you're writing an argumentative piece, you must really be convincing to your markers that they believe what you're saying and that you can really convince them of your emotion, that they can feel involved in the story almost, and really sort of understand and resonate with the emotions that you're bringing across. Link to the topic. This is so important. I know there's a few students out there who like to study their essays beforehand and they try and they memorize it. And I mean, you can obviously do that. You can do what you want, but make sure that when you're in the exam, whether you've studied an essay, like memorized one, or you're writing it on the spot, make sure that you link it to the topic. So if you write your whole essay and you haven't mentioned the topic title in the essay, then your marker is going to see there's something wrong here because it doesn't seem to actually link to the topic. So always remember you have to put the number of the topic that you've chosen, but make sure that in the introduction or the conclusion, or even in the middle, but at least once or twice in the essay, you have directly referenced what your topic is. If you've chosen one of the pictures as your topic, then what you can always do, and what I'd recommend that you do, is that you create your own title based on that picture. So if it's a picture of a dying rose, perhaps, then your topic could be the dying rose, or you could do it more metaphorically if you'd like and do what it represents. But making sure that you give a title to your essay and you give a title, or that your topic is sort of referred to both overtly and covertly in your essay. So you're linking to it, without actually saying it, but also at least in the introduction and the conclusion, you need to put a reference to that particular topic and that particular word to show your marker that you have specifically designed this essay to fit this topic. You have to be intentional about your piece because you only have 400 to 450 words. So there's really no time or space to be giving long sort of waffling language. You really have to be intentional. So planning is so important so that you don't run out of time and run out of words to actually express yourself. Proofreading is the last thing. You must make sure that you go back and that you proofread. You do have quite a bit of time in this paper, so there definitely is an opportunity if you plan well and you put aside the right amount of time for everything. You do have time to go back to proofread, to make some edits, make some changes, make your sentences shorter, check your spelling, check you've got your capital letters where they need to go. So really, I would set aside at least 10 or 15 minutes to proofread. So just having a look at the assessment rubric for a second, we've got 30 marks allocated for content and planning. So this is referring to the organization of ideas for planning, awareness of purpose, audience, and context. So if we look at the exceptional level, the 28 to 30 out of 30, we need outstanding, striking response beyond normal expectations, intelligent, thought-provoking, and mature ideas, exceptionally well organized and coherent, including introduction, body, and conclusion. So what we can see here is the expectation is that firstly, it needs to be original, it needs to be personal, it needs to be something that only you can write. Remember, your markers are marking hundreds of papers every single day at metric marking, so making yours stand out is important. And the way you're going to make it stand out is that if you really are vulnerable and you really access something that's unique about yourself. So really, you've got to put yourself out there, which I know is quite challenging sometimes, right, to put ourselves out there. But remember, especially in matric finals, this is marked anonymously. So you need to go for it. You really need to bear your heart out in this essay and come up with something original, something that only you could write. And then it needs to be coherent, it needs to form a nice structure, it needs to logically progress. And that's where your planning really comes in and why it's so important to plan. Then we have language style editing. So this is referring to the tone, register, style, vocabulary appropriate to purpose or effect in context, word choice, language use and conventions, punctuations, grammar, spelling. So here, if we're looking at the exceptional band, tone, register, style, and vocabulary highly appropriate to purpose, audience, and context, exceptionally impressive use of language, compelling and rhetorically effective in tone, virtually error-free in grammar and spelling, very skillfully crafted. So here what we're looking for is, have you used the correct register? You've been formal, but you've also been emotional. Have you been using some figurative devices, some idiomatic expressions, some figures of speech? Are you making sure, have you read through your work? Have you proofread your work? There's no silly spelling mistakes. There's no errors impeding the readability, and that your diction, that your word choice is really exceptional, that you've gone above and beyond and used interesting vocabulary that's really going to set you apart. And then lastly, we have structure, features of text, paragraph development, and sentence construction. So that's for 5 marks, and these are easy marks to get if you really take care as you write. So for the highest band, we're looking at excellent development of topic, exceptional detail, sentence, paragraphs exceptionally well constructed. And once again, that's got to do with planning. Have you actually understood the topic, broken it down, understood the different aspects, the different layers of complexity, but also been able to structure your paragraphs effectively? Sentence construction, making sure that you are writing sentences that do make sense, that function as individual sentences, but then also work together to create meaning. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video helpful. Just in terms of my advice with timings, you can obviously take it or leave it. Your timings in your exam are totally up to you. But I would definitely recommend that you spend around 10 to 15 minutes, or at least 5 minutes, planning your essay, about an hour writing it, and then another 10 to 15 minutes actually proofreading it. So that should take you to about an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and 30 minutes. And then you've got 45 minutes for each of your transactional writings. And with that, I would once again say, reserve 5 minutes of that time for planning, and then you have 40 minutes to write each transactional piece. The planning is absolutely important because it's going to allow your writing to go quicker, but it's also going to allow your writing to become more focused. So I hope you found the video helpful. Please remember to like the video, to subscribe to the channel, and wishing you the best of luck on your exams.